A major development in the case against Luigi Mangione, accused in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
A judge on Tuesday dismissed the state's terrorism counts, ruling they were legally insufficient. It's a significant shift in one of the most closely watched trials in the country. To help us make some sense of this ruling and what's next, the legal analyst Richard Schoenstein. Richard, good to see you. So the judge here in Manhattan pointed to a lack of intent to, quote, coerce or intimidate a civilian population. What does the law require to prove a terrorism charge?
Well, good morning to you both. So the judge said in his opinion, which I thought was very well written and well reasoned, that the court will note that the term terrorism has been famously difficult to define. And that's one of the problems in this case. So he looked to some of the statutes which talk about an intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, or affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. And this judge thought there was no evidence that the defendant was trying to influence the government necessarily to do anything. This was a murder for whatever reason, but not necessarily intended to prompt a response.
So was this considered a big win for Mangione's legal team?
Well, it's a huge win for his legal team because in the New York State case, it takes out murder in the first degree, meaning there's no path for a conviction that would lead to imprisonment for life without the opportunity of parole. The best the government can do now is second-degree murder, which is 25 years to life, but with an opportunity for parole. So it's a very significant change in the ultimate penalty that could be sought.
Now, the defense wants statements Mangione made to law enforcement and evidence seized at the time of his arrest to be suppressed. Do they have a case to make there?
Yeah, I think that motion is in play, too, and I don't want to prognosticate. I didn't think the judge was going to make this ruling, so I'm not going to predict his next ruling. But the issue here is they took the backpack that had evidence in it at the time they arrested Luigi Mangione, and then they spoke to him while they transported him from Pennsylvania to New York. And the defense says those interviews in transport were no fair. They should have waited until he was in New York in formal custody and had a lawyer. And I think there could be something to that motion. I think the backpack and the evidence is going to be harder for the defense to exclude.
So Mangione is still facing 9 counts here in New York, as well as federal other state charges in Pennsylvania. As far as all of these charges, I guess the overarching umbrella theme here, he's still facing a guy who's got quite an uphill battle, his defense team.
That's true, Chris. And when you think about it, in some ways, this decision by the judge has made the prosecution's job much easier. They don't have to prove terrorism anymore. They don't have to get into that. That was a steep climb that might have put off the jury. And now they just have to prove that this is the guy who did it and that it was an intentional act. And it's pretty clear if he did it, it was an intentional premeditated act. So that's not going to be as difficult. So it's a much easier case to try now that the first degree element has been taken out.
No trial date set on Tuesday. How fast or slow do high-profile cases like these move through the courts?
They go at all sorts of varying speeds. We know this case won't go to trial in 2025 because we're not even going to have another hearing until the end of the year. The other interesting thing to watch here is the federal case. There's still a federal case lingering out there against Mangione, and that case carries the possibility of the death penalty. And it's possible that because of what's happened in New York State, the federal government is going to push forward and maybe even leapfrog the state prosecution because they can seek a greater penalty.
Richard Schoenstein, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
There is a filing deadline regarding Mangione's federal death penalty case coming up at the end of this week. In November, Mangione has a court appearance in Pennsylvania where he was arrested. We'll have more on that coming up.